Hello, and welcome to another video. In this video, we're covering Deception Assassin. This is also Infiltration Shadow. I won't be going over the Infiltration Shadow stuff as we'll be doing it from a Deception Assassin viewpoint. However, if you have any questions for Infiltration, feel free to leave them in the comments. Other than that, we're going to be covering gearing, and on top of that, we'll be doing defenses as well. And this guide, since it's a full-fledged guide, normally if I want to do a quick guide, I leave those out and I direct you to those videos, but if you're only interested in those, the gearing guide will be called a best in slot PvP gearing guide for 7.7. So this covers all stats, augments, and how to hit these breakpoints and what kind of builds you have that would be, I guess, viable. And then I have a video, I think it's called Defensive Management for Swtor. That one covers every defensive, including how you should use your defensives in arenas and also 8v8s. This is basically a rundown of like your defensive priority, rotation, and kind of how things interact. Those dedicated videos are incredibly vital for learning in PvP. So if you haven't already seen them or you want to get better, those videos are great starter points. Now, getting into the role of deception in PvP. Basically, you are able to play two different styles. You have a brawler playstyle and a duelist playstyle that you can play. Depending on which one that you decide to choose, one will take away from the other. So do keep in mind to stick to your playstyle, as trying to do the other while you're a different playstyle, it's just not going to work too well. A lot of the things that you take for a duelist playstyle is going to not be useful for brawling, and brawling vice versa. So do keep that in mind. You do have pretty good burst and you have decent crowd control, which is incredible. There's a lot of advantages that you can use with crowd control that a lot of other classes don't have. For example, Marauder doesn't have access to its crowd control unless it wants to give up Undying or Mad Dash. Usually not a good trade. So you do have some advantage, and you also have taunts, making it a interesting spec overall. Since it is squishy, you have to be really mindful about your positioning and kind of like how you move your character. Be always mindful of like line of sight and force speed, and when your force speed is available. This also means that you'll be also looking at your shroud to avoid any sort of like lockdown. Now, outside of that, arenas is a little bit different. You're kind of looking at perfecting your burst opener, and I will kind of go over that as we get there. But for the most part, as a Deception Assassin, you are a crowd control bot, #1 priority, and then taunting is a second priority. But when it comes to opening, your opener is pretty much everything. Deception's identity is pretty much its opener and how much burst it can do in its opener. You're able to shut down players greatly, and you're also able to heal for your team as well. So do keep that in mind. You are great at dueling, but you're also really good at just helping your team with CC and taunts. But ultimately, you are very swishy, so you do have to be very mindful about how you play and where you position. Now, getting into like the meat and potatoes of positioning and target selection, you're really looking at the stragglers in the back, so the people that are not but they're not like clumped up in, they're fighting with tanks and heals and whatnot. So like a power attack, probably don't want to beef with a power attack. You probably want to go hit that Sork in the back. If you're taking the damage reduction talent, you are most definitely wanting to mess with that Sork, because you'll be able to shut them down. You'll be able to protect your team a lot more. You'll be able to taunt them. You'll be able to low slash them. There's a lot of stuff that you can do to shut them down and give them a relatively hard time, which is a great thing, and is a good part of your role. It's something that you should actually do, especially if you're playing more of a duelist playstyle. However, if you're playing a team brawler playstyle, it is the preferred way that I like to play, which may cause injury. Basically, it gives you an AoE discharge. It's very powerful, and the whole idea there is that you want to take out the squishies, but you also want to focus on getting your discharge off in like a group of players. This will chunk them, and especially during your Shadowcraft window, you're able to almost wipe just by yourself with AoE discharge. You're most likely guaranteed a kill, probably, if you do it properly. You get your double auto crit AoE discharge. If people are already low, you're most likely going to get a kill from that. It is incredibly deadly, and if you like pair it up with another person also playing the same thing, which by the way, it's actually really fun if you play doublets deception in general. However, the enemy team is not so much going to enjoy that. Double may cause injury can really wipe people that decide to clump up, so do keep that in mind. It is a very decent spec for playing like AoE and single target at the same time. AP, however, will always be better, but you know, for the most part, it is a interesting class, and you have multiple options for like how you want to play. But regardless, you're always going to be squishy, and movement and basically target selection is going to be incredibly important. So when it comes to mercenaries, you always want to be looking out for net, and you have shroud to counteract that. But for the most part, storks are your target priority, and you're pretty much always able to handle them quite well because your kit is pretty good, and your kit is also pretty similar to them, so you can match their force speed with your force speed. Excuse me. If you are interested in more ways to refine your movement, I do have a video covering movement in this game, and I also have another video covering combat in this game. Both of those videos are still up to date and contain a lot of useful information that will help you kind of work on your finesse of like movement and positioning. But other than that, I would highly recommend checking out my pre-made versus pre-made deception assassin videos where I'm playing may cause injury. It gives you an idea of like kind of like how you can play the team brawl style that I like to play. However, I'll say that there's not too much to think about other than positioning, and I can't really describe that with just a video. That's a commentary kind of thing, so you need to like actually watch my videos to see what I'm talking about. And when it comes to target selection, is also kind of just a simple thing where you're kind of looking at the stragglers rather than going in there and just trying to beef with like a rage jug and AP power deck. Now to cover stats in your gearing, basically this is what I run. I don't recommend this unless you are experienced at the game. This is high alacrity. High alacrity is incredibly fun, and for the most part you do have some critical passives. So for example, instead of having 33% crit, I'm going to have 53% crit because I'm taking the talent gives you 20%. And then I also have Shadowcraft, which means pretty much any extra critical during this window is going to go to your critical multiplier, which means you're going to have basically quote unquote super crits. This means that you're going to be doing a lot of damage in your opener. And I like to run high alacrity just because it feels good. And I play the brawler style pretty much all the time. This is usually my normal loadout. The difference being is if I decide to change my stats and go low alacrity, you're looking at 2054 alacrity to 2200, and then you're looking at 4850 critical. If you want to run any accuracy, that's up to you. The main reason you would ever run accuracy is to make sure that your maul doesn't miss and your reaping strike doesn't miss. So if you're playing a dueling playstyle, you're most likely going to want the accuracy. But if you're not playing a dueling playstyle, missing those abilities is not a very big deal. If you miss your maul, you can just reuse it. The proc for the ability doesn't actually go away if you miss it. But Reaping Strike does, so do keep that in mind if you're running the Reaping Strike Tactical, which is called Blade of Elements. Other than that, that's pretty much the standard for that. And I would say if you are running high alacrity, it's definitely the Critical Mastery Relic priority. If you're running the normal, 2200 alacrity-ish to 4850 build, you're looking at Power Mastery, so you'd be rocking your power. So Focus Retribution and Serendipitous Assault. And that Devastating Vengeance is the critical one, which will end up being pretty static for the most part. Gearing doesn't really get too crazy in this class, and for the most part, high alacrity is very fun, but again, I wouldn't recommend it to anybody that's not experienced. Now, going into our tacticals and implants, for to cover our implants first, which are our set bonus, I pretty much always run Shadowcraft. Shadowcraft is the core identity to Deception and Hatred at the moment. Less so Darkness, because you don't really have the abilities to benefit from it. We depth pervading faults is pretty good with Shadowcraft, but the uptime on it is just not very good, so you just don't find the value. You're mainly looking at Shadowcraft because it'll reset your Phantom Stride. That's a huge mobility buff, but also at the same time, the critical chance in the opener will create a burst window unlike any other. And if you're running 2 cloaks, you're able to basically guarantee 12 seconds of that opener if you decide to use yourself out. Very deadly, very strong. Pretty enjoyable, especially if you're running this with the dynamic force. This pretty much means when you stealth out, you're pretty much guaranteed to get a reset on your recklessness because there's like a 15 to 19-second window where you wouldn't have it. And then we pretty much always run second wind. Second wind gives you extra mobility. It's very helpful. And then it also gives you a little heal, which is always nice. But for the most part, you're getting it for the mobility, as mobility is king. And the more annoying you can be to hit, the better for your defensive. You're not very tanky, as you can see. Your sword ability is actually pretty low compared to most classes that are considered melee. But for the most part, when it comes to kiting other players, the extra movement speed is going to matter a ton. It's going to allow you to get into positions and just be able to attack somebody and weave out of range a lot, which is very important. And it's a kind of like mechanic that you definitely want to learn, just as any melee in the first place. It's going to be a little bit more important on deception because you're so squishy. And it's going to be a lot easier for you to take advantage of because you're going to have force speed, you're going to have force slow, you're going to have low slash, which is a little bit different for other ones like concealment. You're not really going to have that advantage. Other than that, those two are best in slot. I wouldn't bother changing those for the most part. If you're ever playing arena and you just want to focus on getting kills and you're running two cloaks, dynamic force over second wind. And then force training is also not too bad, but I'd pretty much never take Shadowcraft off. And then when it comes to tacticals, you're looking at May Cause Injury, Awaken Flamed, Blade of the Elements, and two cloaks. Two cloaks is best slot for arena, so it allows you to basically get a double opener. It also means that you can still play safety with your cloak out. And then Blade of Elements is a nice one if you just want to just go for big hits. This is a big hit tactical. It's not bad, but it's not great. Awaken Flame is the set it and forget it tactical, so if you don't want to think at all and you just want guaranteed extra damage, Awaken Flame is the way to go. And then when you're going for cleave or brawler, May Cause Injury is the way to go there. So to give you an example of like kind of how this works, if you do double lacerate before you do an opener, you're getting your stacks here, but you're still going to have to use a Voltec Slash for that stuff to actually register, so you can pre-proc your crit chance. Just great, just wait for our relics to go off. So we have 53% here. Normally we wouldn't have that. Now if I let this stuff fall off, you'll see it go back to normal. But basically you can like pre-build your stuff, and then when you go out of combat, it does fall. So even if you had recently lacerated and you still had your buffs up, it wouldn't stay. That's a mechanic that you really want to pay attention to, and it will help your damage a lot if you end up taking this talent, which I highly recommend. All right, now to give you a quick example of like kind of like how this tactical goes before I go into like priority and rotation, is that every time that you want to open, you're going to do a Voltec Slash, discharge, and then you do another Voltec Slash and discharge. Like you have to do it that way, or you do lacerate. Mostly Voltec Slash will be more damage. To make sure that you're getting your May Cause Injury little icon here. If you don't do that, you're not getting AoE discharge, and you're losing pretty much all value of your tactical. So another reason why I run high alacrity. This means that I can get more discharges off, I can get the procs for it faster, and it means I can get more bursts out. More AoE bursts, that is. But, you know, other than that, we're going to go into rotation next, so I'll catch you guys in a second. All right, now we're back. To get a drink there, because it's going to be a long part of the video. Or no, it's not too long, it's just going to be a little bit longer than the other parts. All right, now getting into this, we're going to really talk about the alternate options here. So let's just assume that we're running a lightning critical, which will be a way to get an auto crit for your white damage, and then we're just running our generic stuff. Okay, so I'll get this up, so it's 2 lacerates. When you do this twice, this means you'll get these 2 buffs. These buffs are the ones that you're looking for. And then right before you open, you need to make sure that you're installed if you're in a Phantom Stride. Once you Phantom Stride, you're going to be able to use a discharge immediately, so we immediately do that. We're going to pop Recklessness, use on Maul, then Reaping Strike, and then we're going to discharge once again. Ball Lightning will be the priority, but basically that'll be your burst opener, and that'll be your burst priority. That's what you're looking at for your burst overall with Reaping Strike. My damage could be way higher. I'm just running high alacrity, so it's not like perfect, and I'm not trying to make it perfect for the most part. I'm just trying to show you like an example. There are different ways to do this. So for example, if you're doing the Maul opener, which I can show you real quick, This one will be a little bit different, and it'll be very force hungry if you're not taking the talent that I normally do, Lightning Engine. So the whole ideal by this is you're gonna open with Maul. Got our stacks, our discharge, pop recklessness. For the most part, you know, you kind of want to have your Maul doing a lot of damage, but it's not always the best solution to doing damage to a lot of classes. A lot of classes will have decent armor pen, and or just in general, Maul doesn't hit as hard. Now, when it comes to swapping out your tactical, so for example, let's just do this one more time. See if we can hit a 130, because I hit a 130 earlier and that was pretty cool. Yeah, 123. That's slightly better. But typically, you're going to like try to focus on getting your opener rotation. You can kind of like freestyle a little bit, but for the most part, when you're going for a Maul opener, which I don't like, honestly, I think this should not be a thing. I think this should really be just give a spec back. Honestly, it's really silly that this is a thing. Not a fan of it. So those are my opinions on that. I'm not gonna linger on that for too long. I'll just show you Awakened Flame real quick. So the whole idea of that is that whenever you use Bolt Lightning, you're getting a little extra damage. That is literally all it is. It's not anything special. You're able to pretty much perma upkeep it. Bolt Lightning already does an incredible amount of damage, so getting a little extra damage is nice, and it gives you extra incentive to use your Bolt Lightning. So if you're not using your Bolt Lightning like you should, like all the time, it's a nice little tactical to run to ensure that you always make it a priority. Two cloaks. This one is a little different. I don't want to show you the double opener, but typically you would just go for the regular opener, depending whether you like to use discharge opener or the Reef and Strike tactical opener. Typically I wouldn't bother with the Reef and Strike one, because if you're not running the tactical for it, it's not going to hit that hard. Discharge is usually going to be your priority, and especially if you decide to take off lightning critical, it's a little bit different, but just for the sake of it, to show what it's like without what do you call it? The tactical. It's not like terrible, right? You still get like a 90k, which is great. It's a lightning critical that's really carrying that right there. But for the most part, lightning critical is usually not what I decide to run. It is actually really good though, so this is a complete preference here. Going into the way that I prefer to play, so we're looking at pretty much these. The whole ideal behind the regen one is basically never have any energy problems, so you're kind of just looking at like something like this, which is quite nice. The damage difference is really not that much, and for the most part, you're basically never going to have any energy problems regardless of whatever ability you decide to use or how much or how frequently you decide to choose to basically hit things. Which is very important, especially when you're spamming lacerate and you have really good uptime. If you have really good uptime with this one right here, you start having energy problems. If you're getting new, or you're getting energy problems and you're new to the spec as well, highly recommend just trying this one out. Lightning Engine will just make things so much easier. And if you're going for a brawler style, it's arguably just better because it's going to help you get your discharges off more often. Other than that, there's not really anything too crazy going on. So when it comes to make cause injury again, you know, like when you're doing your opener, you want to get your full attack slash and do it again. You want that so you can get your make cause injury proc. For the most part, again, it's not too crazy. Another thing that you really want to learn is a mechanic that is a part of this. In my previous deception guide, I actually showcased this with a video clip, but because I don't have anybody online to help me with this real quick, I am just going to show you on a dummy. So basically, you see how I'm 8 meters away. We can get up to like, I think it's like 5 to 6 meters or something like that. When you throw your low slash, you can actually get a delay there. So during that travel time, as you see the low slash like twirling around to hit them, you're able to hit them during that low slash travel time. And then you'll be able to hit them again, and that one will be the one that will break the low slash. So you'll be able to be like hit them, and you know, if I'm faster there, I just kind of hit 4 speed late, but you get the ideal. Through the travel time, you'll be able to get an extra ability. So normally if you just do it like while you're standing on top of them or whatever, the next ability is going to immediately just break the low slash. So that's something to keep in mind. That's going to help you get extra DPS off. And back in the day, we used to be able to, you know, low slash and finish right at the same time. So you pretty much guarantee that at all times, regardless of how far away you were. And other than that, that is pretty much kind of like the priority and rotation. Oh, actually, hold on. I showed you the opener. I didn't show you the priority and kind of the rotation. So like the whole ideal, it's going to be a second here. We'll just go ahead and open, even though it's going to be sloppy. So Reaping Strike and Maul are your white damage priority. Discharge is your main priority. You always want to use Discharge. You don't really want to sit on it. Discharge is going to be your main core. You're going to constantly rebuild that. Ball Lightning is going to be the main part that's building up your voltage stacks for your Discharge, and then Reaping Strike is going to be your alternate. So the whole time you're going to be thinking about that. Maul is just going to be a good net positive when it is glowing. Other than that, you don't want to spam Maul. Maul is very force hungry, so every time it glows, it's actually a lot cheaper. But for the most part, there are some times that you will Maul without a proc, and it's not terrible damage. But you see a 25k there, it's not great. It's 48k, non-procs. You get the kind of ideal. Like, the ability is not terrible, but since I'm running low crit, usually you have more crit in this, so you can find more power for your Maul. But the whole ideal behind it is that Voltec Slash is your main filler. Ball Lightning used on cooldown. Reaping Strike is an extra kind of like filler, like Ball Lightning, except for it's like part of your burst. And the whole ideal is just constantly spam Voltec, Ball Lightning, Reaping Strike, build your Discharge stacks, and use your Maul when it glows. Don't have to think about much more than that. Lacerate is kind of like a pre-opener kind of thing. Lacerate's not really good in AoE, so it's just not really a good ability in general. And kind of like how you use your low slash. But other than that, that's kind of just how it goes. Voltec Slash number 1, Ball Lightning number 2, and Reaping Strike number 3. That's kind of like your core abilities that are going to constantly up your Discharge. But when it comes into order priority for burst damage, Discharge, Maul, Reaping Strike, or Reaping Strike, Maul. Either one doesn't matter too much. Typically, you want to do Reaping Strike first because the Maul will cost less force, therefore give you more time to regen your force. And then when it comes to filler, it's always Ball Lightning because Ball Lightning actually has a cooldown and Voltec Slash does not. Other than that, yeah, I would say we have it sufficiently covered. If you have any questions or I'm just completely confusing you or butchering this, feel free to let me know. I'll be happy to clarify anything. Other than that, yeah, I think that's it for that one. We're going to go ahead and jump to the next section. All right, take number 3, recovering defensives. So first thing that you want to think about is Voltaic Defense. If you ever need this over the damage option, this is incredible for stride building. So if you're playing a tank heal game where you're playing just like a match where you're getting tunneled a lot and you already know you're going to get tunneled, taking that is much better. So you want to always pre-build your lacerates because this one works a little bit different. So when we're going to damage reduction, so we're going to lacerate this, we have entropic field that's already building damage reduction. So when we have already double lacerated, we don't have to use extra. We only have to use 2 lacerates. If you do not pre-build, you're going to have to use like 5 lacerates to get your full DR stacks, which is devastating. You definitely always make sure that you get your double lacerate before you open. If you're running this build, this will make you way more tanky. You have 29% internal and elemental damage reduction. That's going to make a huge difference, especially if you're dealing with Sorks. Other than that, that is a pretty basic, just flat damage reduction. Don't have to do too much, just have to use lacerate. Or not lacerate, but Voltaic Slash. I have to use lacerate in the opener for the 2 stacks. 2 starting stacks, Jesus, man. I am butchering everything. Alright, now going into Overcharge Saber. This is an option that will help your force regen, obviously. But it also is a heal. So basically the whole idea of using this ability, I don't know why this immediately show up on my bar. I'll give you an example. So when we're going into like an opener real quick, we're going to go and do our normal opener. And the whole ideal here is that once you've got your opener kind of like rolling and you're getting ready to use your reset, you would pop it. Then you see as we get extra healing here, It's quite nice. Not amazing, but it's quite nice. 11k tick there, it's not too bad. So it does increase your damage a little bit for the most part. It's just really it's getting the healing out of it. And then once it's gone, it's it's gone. You want to use it really early and you should want to tie up your opener or a little bit after your opener so you're actually getting the heal effect out of it. Other than that, that is a simple ability that doesn't really do anything else besides that. And going into our other option really is that whether you want to run Shroud of Madness. This is like kind of like another kind of like defensive. So if you know that you're taking a thermal or somebody has like a lingering thermal and whatnot, or like Sticky Dart for example, Shroud of Madness is not going to save you. If somebody has a lingering thermal, they have a lingering like Sticky Dart or whatever, it's not going to save you. So if you even take Shroud of Madness, it's still not going to save you. Those things like persist. I think thermal actually will come off if you have Shroud. But for the most part, those things will usually just linger on you and they will eventually reveal you. Especially if you don't take this and you take Avoidance, which I highly recommend taking. Avoidance is really good. It's about to get buffed and it's going to be better. That's just something to definitely keep in mind. So probably don't stealth while you still have a thermal unpropped or unpopped on you. Other than that, Sticky Dart's really the only one to look out for. And then when it comes to AoE, or Storm might be the main reason that you'd be looking to take Shroud of Madness. Outside of that, you don't really need it because it's going to purge everything when you stealth out anyway. Now with that covered, you're looking at your main defenses, which will be Shroud. Shroud is great. It's going to help you against that. It's going to help you against Stormwatch. You're pretty much looking at when somebody gets their rotation set up on you, that's when you want to pop it. So like when there's a thermal on you, when there's Stormwatch on you, when there's all dots on you, that's the time to hit Force Shroud. You want to do it before you lose your health, not after you lose your health, because then it's kind of redundant. Deflection is really only good against a white damage, so think Carnage, Arsenal, Marksman. Those are the main three. Mortal is also another one. You typically only pop this when white damage specs are hitting you or you're using it for the CC immunity. Otherwise, it is a mediocre defensive, and it doesn't do anything that's meta damage. Most of the meta damage in this game is all yellow, so keep that in mind. Other than that, you don't really have any other defensives. You have the DR, and the DR is really good. But other than that, movement is going to be your best defensive, and understanding how to weave in and out of range. It's going to be your #1 priority for survival. And with all the extra mobility, so for example, we have lower cooldown and force speed. That's going to be 13 seconds here soon with the next patch. The 1 minute, 15 second breaker, so that's a really huge thing. And then force speed being 3 seconds, and you know it's just nice in general. And it's also going to slow by 75% for 2.5 seconds. It's going to help you a lot to kite players. And then you also have Phantom Stride. So there's a lot of finesse that you can do around people. There's a lot of things that you can do to kind of like keep yourself safe. You can low slash and force slow, but when it comes to like more coordinated play, there's like certain situations where you can't really do anything and you have to rely on a guard. Other than that, you know, defensives on this class, kind of bare bones, but you know, nonetheless, Shroud, yellow damage, deflection, white damage, overcharge, just a nice little heal, and the DR talent, incredibly powerful against pretty much any yellow damage in the game. So Stormwatch, Lethality, Virulence, and Lightning Madness. Alright, other than that, defenses are kind of relatively explained. I'm going to go into talents here. Alright, now getting into talents, since we're coming to the end here. If you guys have any questions, feel free to leave them in the talents. Leave them in the comments. Sorry, I butchered English this whole time. And sorry for those that are not native speakers. I know I talk a little bit fast and kind of make it a little harder to follow, but the closed captions should be able to handle that quite well. So this is our talent loadout. We basically don't change this. If you like to do the brawler build, which is may cause injury, you're pretty much always going to be running this, and you're not really going to change it that much. You want the fade so you can get your Shadowcraft off more often. However, dark stability sometimes is good because the CC immunity, but for the most part, I like fade. You find more uses of it and you have it up more often. It's just a lot of damage. You pretty much always take force magnetism. The reason why is just the extra duration on force speed is a massive change, and it also gives you extra movement speed. It also gives you extra movement speed on force cloak as well, which just increases your mobility that much more. You do have options here, like these are interesting, but for the most part I always just find Energized Blade to be better because it allows you to get your discharge stacks a lot faster. So this means that you're able to get a lot more AoE out. Pretty much always run Voltaic Engine for the extra critical hit chance, which since I'm playing high alacrity is vital. However, the DR is incredibly powerful, as I showed before. And a lot of times you are going to find extreme value in taking this one over the crit one. But personally, I don't care about survival and I usually just play this in 8s. However, if I'm playing arenas, I will run this one. But other than that, I pretty much don't swap off a lightning engine either, because this one allows me to play the class kind of like really spammy, which we didn't used to be able to really do. So being able to do this now, I don't know, it kind of like changes the way that the class plays, and it feels really good. I really liked lightning critical at the beginning of the expansion and going for those big hits, but it's lost its appeal to me in Make Less Injury since they've reworked the talent, or not talent, but the tactical. It is a lot more fun to play, so I usually always go this one. I rarely ever run Overshirt Saber, if ever. So the time I just don't find the value, so I don't bother. And Lightning Critical, again, you know, obviously it's very good. It's a more duelist kind of like playstyle. And this one will be more brawler, so this is a huge thing that you want to not take, but you really want to keep in mind, especially when you're playing the game. So like if you're running this and you got maul stun and whatnot, you probably don't want to be like in the trenches fighting with everybody. You probably want to be trying to force like pick-offs, like catching something out of spawn, or like dueling somebody on the off node rather than being up in the front, especially with the this allow you to AoE force speed slow people, and having this one as well. This means you're gonna be able to just handle spamming your abilities, but also just being able to discharge more often and be able to keep them in, you know, kind of place for your AoE discharge. So that's the whole concept around that. And then fade is really simple. We all kind of already know how this works. These are not, this one's not great, but you know, AoE DR is incredible, but for the most part it's not worth giving up these two. So it's really just whether you want the CC immunity or you want fade. Again, if you're running the duelist build, you're pretty much always going to go dark stability. Now, when it comes to this section here, this used to be really good, but now it's really just not that great. With the movement speed changes, this is not that great, like at all. You're pretty much always going to go immersion, because you are, that's a force phase, they call it now. Because it's going to give you so much more ability to escape. And then Lambast, it's just not good. The ability's not good. Don't bother. Don't bother. It's absolutely horrible. I know a lot of Deception Assassins like to just spam the last raid for some reason. But hey, you know, they're living their best life. We'll just let them do that. Going into 68 here, it's honestly a no-brainer. I don't understand why these are in the same row. Honestly, these are not really even in the same atmosphere. Let's see, maybe row 1, maybe, but Severing Slash really has no point of really like being there. The one cool thing about Severing Slash for DPS, especially as Deception, is that it gives you damage reduction. If you see that at the bottom there, it's very cool. I really like that idea. However, I do think this is probably just baseline for how it is. Make a baseline, it'd probably be pretty good. Or give it a Shroud baseline, one or the other. But other than that, you know, didn't really find the value there. I have tried this, by the way. It is really interesting, but for the most part, it's kind of like overkill. Like, there's sometimes that you don't need the damage reduction because you're not really going to hit, and you would much rather have Force Shroud. Force Shroud is just more versatile. You're going to want it more often. These I never change. I always run Avoidance. Avoidance is a key thing for your mobility, and it gives you extra cooldown on your breaker, which now brings that down to 1 minute 15 seconds, as I said before. And then here soon it's going to be a 13-second force speed, because it's going to bring your force speed down by 7 seconds to step 5. That's going to be huge. So overall, these are talents. Pretty much never change them. And talents are going to decide whether you're playing Swtor or not, and then also your tactical as well. So most of your build diversity is your tactical and your talents. So do keep that in mind. Other than that, all the builds are pretty much viable. High alacrity or low alacrity. I'd recommend low alacrity for anybody that's trying Deception out. Now going into pretty much closing, and the main things I want to leave you guys with is if you guys are interested in like seeing the brawler playstyle, or just it's like more of the team fight playstyle, I have a lot of videos on Deception where I play pre-made versus pre-made, so like a 6-man versus like a 7-8-man. I've had a lot of those videos, I think, and I have a lot of my playlist separated. So there's like pre-made versus pre-made games, and then there's also like Deception, Assassin specifically video playlist. So if you're looking for anything specific, definitely check those out. When I talk about movement, it's going to be a lot of those videos where I commentate, and you can kind of see like how I move and how I kind of like control my character and how I want to like move my character around. That's going to be really important. But other than that, it's not something that you can really teach in a guide. Now, of course, if you're looking for arenas, the playstyle is like almost completely different. You're kind of like throwing it out the window, most of the stuff that I'm going to tell you about the brawling playstyle, but it's still very important to know because the movement is going to be vital for both of them. That is a little bit more different. I do have an arena playlist, and I played a lot of Deception last expansion and a decent amount this expansion as well. I've always played Deception for quite a long time. I pretty much played every single spec in the game. Melee has always been my focus. Every melee spec I spent a lot of time on, and I've played a lot. This is actually my second character I ever made on this account. Back in the day, it was called I can't remember. It was called something silly. I deleted it, and when I restored it, I named it Erased, and I've had Erased ever since then. But yeah, this is one of my oldest characters next to my Stork, and I think it was my PTA that I made just after that. And it wasn't until I found Marauder that I became Marauder main. But you know, this is definitely one of my main tunes. If you guys have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. Other than that, you know, I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day, and thanks for watching.